Hi, everybody. Welcome to our program. I'm Tom.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
And today we're going to continue to go nuts for nuts. Okay, if I think about walnuts and pecans and other things like that, I go nuts. I go crazy because I really want to eat them. Not really. Of course, I like to eat nuts. I usually add olive oil to them and maybe a little bit of garlic salt or something like that to give them a little bit of flavor. But as we talked about last time, there are lots of uses for nuts. They can be used in ceremonies. They can be thrown on newlyweds if you're in Rome. And, of course, you can also give people peanuts during Chinese New Year, although, as we said, we haven't really heard too much of this tradition. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but yes, they can be used in ceremonies, and they've been consumed for millions of years, and also we continue to use them today in various recipes.
Oh, we sure can. Well, today we're going to talk a little bit more about the shape and the size of some of these nuts, what they look like, what they taste like, and some interesting facts about what it takes to crack open the macadamia nut, which is insane. And also a little warning about a favorite nut, the cashew, and how you need to eat it and what you need to avoid if you are a cashew lover. But first, guys, we're going to listen to the article read one more time. We'll be right back. Nuts are full of astonishing facts that go beyond their taste and nutrition. For example, did you know that walnuts and pecans are often confused? While both are wrinkled and have a similar shape, there's an easy way to tell them apart. Walnuts have a rough, brain-like shell, reflecting their brain-boosting benefits, while pecans have a smoother texture and a more oval shape. Their flavors are distinct, too. Walnuts offer a mild, earthy taste with a slight bitterness, whereas pecans delight the taste buds with a sweet, buttery note that makes them perfect for desserts. Among all nuts, macadamia nuts hold the title of being both one of the most expensive and hardest to crack. Native to Australia, these creamy delicacies have such sturdy shells that an astounding 300 pounds per square inch of pressure is required to crack them, which is more than any other nut. Challenging harvest and processing procedures, combined with the fact that macadamia trees take 7 to 10 years to produce nuts, explain their premium price tag. Perhaps the most surprising nut fact involves the cashew. What we know as a cashew nut actually grows outside a fruit called the cashew apple. Even more intriguing is the fact that raw cashews are not safe to eat. They contain a toxic shell layer similar to poison ivy, which is why cashews are always sold processed. The cashew apple, though rarely seen outside regions where it grows, is actually edible and is used in juices and jams in countries like Brazil and India. Nuts are small treasures of nature, filled with secrets and stories that enhance their simple, crunchy delights. Enjoy them and chew on the wonders they hold.
Okay, let's get to it. Let's talk about some fascinating facts about nuts. Nuts are full of astonishing facts that go beyond their taste and nutrition. So I guess we're going to be talking about some nuts trivia in today's program. And of course, if something's astonishing, well, it's really surprising. It really impresses you. You really want to learn more about that thing. So of course, these are very, very interesting facts or trivia about nuts that we'll discuss in today's program.
So here's one, for example. Did you know that walnuts and pecans are often confused? People mistake them for each other. I can't imagine this because they're so different looking. I grew up with a pecan tree in my dad's yard. He had a law office on a street, and when they built the law office, there was this beautiful pecan tree in the front yard, and they wanted him to cut it down, and he was like, no, because he grew up eating pecans. He loved those. He loved walnuts too, but pecans are kind of unusual to have in Arizona. And I'll tell you, Tom, we had people who would always come over and steal our pecans.
Oh, no.
So my mom tried to get them off the tree as soon as possible. She could use them in her cooking. Usually the time that they're ready to harvest is around holiday season. So I can see why we use pecans a lot in our Christmas cooking and our Thanksgiving cooking. But they're my favorite nut if I had to pick a favorite. But we're going to talk about how people sometimes confuse the two, although they look very different. They're both wrinkled. I would say the pecan nut is wrinkled itself, but its shell is not wrinkled. It's very smooth. It's a brown, small brown size. I think it's a little smaller to me than a walnut is if you have a walnut shell. The walnut shell is wrinkled, but the walnut itself is wrinkled as well.
Right.
So they're both wrinkled. They have a similar shape. They're both kind of round. But there's an easy way to tell them apart. So if you tell things apart, you kind of notice the similarities and the differences, and you can identify which one is which.
Yeah, we're talking about the fact that their appearance is often confused, okay? That does not mean that the walnut itself is kind of crazy. I don't know where I am. I'm confused. Am I a walnut? Am I a pecan? What am I? No, it just means people can't really tell the difference between them. They look very similar. And yes, as a boy from the north in the United States, when I was a kid, walnuts and pecans looked very similar to me. So yeah, they were often confused with each other. They were often mistaken for each other. People thought one was the other or the other was the one, etc. Well, let's talk about how they're different here. While both are wrinkled and have a similar shape, there's an easy way to tell them apart. Okay, so yes, wrinkled, of course, is what happens to us as we get older. We've got all these extra lines on our faces. But, of course, the shells, well, not the shells here, but actually the nuts themselves are wrinkled. They're not smooth like peanuts or cashews or whatever. Those are all very smooth. But walnuts and pecans are wrinkled. Well, there's an easy way to tell them apart. Walnuts have a rough, brain-like shell reflecting their brain-boosting benefits, while pecans have a smoother texture and a more oval shape. So these are some ways that you can tell them apart, how you can tell which one is which. Walnuts have a brain-like shell. Okay, so the shell looks like a brain too. Mm-hmm. And of course, if you look at a walnut, you'll think, hey, if it looks like a brain, then it must be good for my brain. It's got brain-boosting benefits. And then pecans are smoother in texture. They're not as brain-shaped as walnuts are, and they're more oval in shape, which is like the shape of an egg.
Right. Oval shape. We'll often describe people's faces sometimes as having an oval shape. So that's the shape of the pecan's shell. Now, their flavors are distinct too. They're very different. Walnuts offer a mild, earthy taste, kind of a savory, earthy taste just kind of gives you that feeling that you're eating part of nature. Not that you're eating dirt or anything like that, but that you're eating something from nature. It's a natural taste instead of something that's processed that we buy from boxes sometimes. So it's got a slight bitterness to it. I think that's true. I've never thought of a walnut as bitter, but a little bit of a bitter taste to it. Slight just means very small. Whereas pecans delight the taste buds. They're sweet, not too sweet though, but they've got a buttery note or a buttery flavor to them. When you use that word note, it just means a little bit of something to it. It's got a sweet note to it. Not too much, just a little bit. And we'll often use it when we're describing things like some sort of culinary dish. You know, it's got a sweet note to it, a buttery note to it. So these are some of the facts about these nuts, how some people at least would describe them. Maybe you feel like when you eat these nuts, you have a different takeaway or a different perspective on them. But this is the writer's perspective, of course. Slight is one of our vocab words. It means very small in degree. It's kind of so small you wouldn't even notice it. Maybe a little bit trivial. But maybe some days you feel okay, and other days you feel like, I think I have a slight cold. It's not a big cold. It's not going to, interrupt your day, or make you stay home from school or work, but you just don't feel your best.
Right, and slight, of course, is often used as an adverb. You could describe something as being slightly bitter or slightly sweet, just a little bit sweet. But here it has a slight bitterness or slightly bitter, you could say. And then, of course, pecans taste a little different. They've got this sweet, buttery note, and they're perfect for desserts. Indeed, to me, walnuts are kind of dry a little bit, whereas pecans, yes, indeed, are a little sweeter. And so, therefore, they'll be used in desserts. You'll see them in pies and things like that. Now, here in the next paragraph, it says, among all nuts, macadamia nuts hold the title of being both one of the most expensive and hardest to crack. Okay, so macadamia nuts, of course, are very, very loved here in Taiwan. I've seen them all over the place, although they are quite expensive. I think they're just simply called Hawaiian nuts here in Taiwan, but that's not what we call them in English. We call them macadamia nuts. And of course, they're very expensive and they're very hard to crack open. I've never seen the shell of the macadamia nut before. Usually when you buy them, they're already open. They're already without their shells. But if you want to open them yourself, they're very hard to crack open. I wonder if a common nutcracker would work.
I don't think so, because if you look at what our article says, you need 300 pounds per square inch of pressure just to crack one open. I'm like Tom, I've never seen a real macadamia shell in my life. Usually when you buy them, they're already ready to eat. Oh, look at that. Tom's showing me a picture. So go online, check that out. It looks like the shell is very close to the nut. And maybe that's why it makes it so hard. But they are native to Australia. That's where they originate. I remember when I was growing up, I'd never come to Asia at that point, of course. And I remember my parents came back from Hawaii on a trip, and they had a can of macadamia nuts that had chocolate on them. And I thought, oh, this is like heaven. These are the best nuts ever. I had thought that the cashew nut was the best nut up to that point in terms of just being like, a little piece of candy. But the macadamia nut's even better, I think. So they are native to Australia. They're described as being creamy delicacies. Yeah, when you chew into them, bite into them, it does feel a little creamy, actually. And a delicacy, we use this word when we're describing something that's special. It's very fine. It's an exquisite kind of delicacy. So it's not cheap. You got to pay for it. And part of the problem is that just processing these nuts takes a lot of effort and work. So you have to pay more.
Right. And of course, because you pay more, it's considered a delicacy. Like, of course, in France, they have escargot, which is snails, I believe. That's considered a delicacy, a very special kind of food. Or that stinky fish dish in Sweden, I guess that's considered a delicacy as well. I don't remember what it's called. But yes, indeed, you need a lot of power to break open those shells, so you probably need a special kind of machine, or just simply buy them already shelled. Okay, that brings us to the midway point in our lesson for today. Let's take a break, but we'll be right back to continue talking about nuts.Hello
everyone, 我是派老师。今天讲解的是4月3号 Unit2 Going Nuts for Nuts 第2天的课文内容。昨天课程介绍了坚果的文化意义还有营养价值。今天课文进一步的介绍3-4种常见的坚果，包括 walnut、pecan、macadamia 还有 cashew。好，那我们一起来看学习重点。请同学看到第一段的第一个句子，这个句子写得很好。怎么说呢？前面已经有几个段落，有3个段落了。那第一个句子呢，承先启后，也就是他做了一个很好的衔接。他说 Nuts are full of astonishing facts that go beyond their taste and nutrition。 第一天的课文内容已经介绍了坚果的营养价值，所以呢，在这个新的段落的第一句就告诉我们，他现在要谈的呢，并不只是营养价值而已。好，那我们来看第3个句子，这里有一些有趣的例子哦，比方说，常常会有人把坚果当中的胡桃还有核桃这2个搞混，为什么呢？因为它们的表面都有一些皱褶，而且形状呢是蛮相似的。 好，请看第3个句子。There's an easy way to tell them apart. 那虽然外形很相似，可是要把它们分别开来，要分辨它们 tell them apart 其实呢是有简单的方法。好，那再来呢，第5个句子就告诉我们，其中有一个方法，就是它们的味道其实很不一样。Their flavors are distinct. 请同学把这个 distinct 画起来。那其实呢，就是相当迥异的，相当不一样的。好，再来，请同学看到第2段。好，第2段的第2个句子。那我们知道，从第2段开始，其实作者就开始介绍不同种类的坚果。首先要介绍的呢，就是 macadamia 了。好，前面介绍了 walnut 核桃、胡桃它们的差异之后，再来第2段呢，介绍的是夏威夷豆。那怎么说这个夏威夷豆？大家知道它其实是最昂贵而且很难开的。好，我们看到第2个句子 ，native to Australia， 所以夏威夷豆其实呢原产地是在澳洲啊。然后呢，它的壳其实相当的坚固 ，sturdy shells， 所以才会说夏威夷豆的壳是最难开的。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back, guys. It's day 2 of our Going Nuts for Nuts, and we're talking about more astonishing facts about nuts that go beyond even their taste and nutrition. We know that they're tasty. We know that they're good for us. They've got a lot of healthy ingredients in them. But we also learned the difference between walnuts and pecans. Walnuts have that wrinkled, round shell. And it kind of looks like a brain if you just look at the shell. And then when you crack open the walnut, it looks like the brain has been split in half, right?
Yep.
The pecan is different. It's got an oval-shaped shell. It's smoother. It's kind of this pretty dark brown. I always thought it kind of looked like wood. We would go and pick up the pecans that fell to the ground from the tree in front of my dad's office, and we would have a nutcracker right there, Tom, to get into those pecans because they were so yummy. But yeah, we had to say goodbye to that tree because Dad sold his office. So I miss those pecans. They're not cheap to buy either, and we use them a lot in our cooking. We use pecans more often in our cooking than we do walnuts. But they're both tasty. I've noticed there's a bakery here in Taiwan that I like. And they make cookies, chocolate chip cookies, with both walnuts or pecans. You can pick which one you want. Sometimes I get both. Walnuts, as the article says or mentions, they're a little bit more earthy tasting. They're not as sweet, but they're really, really good for you. They're particularly good for our brain health. Our brains need a lot of good fat. And we forget that sometimes because we always think, oh, don't eat so much fat. But the good fat is really good for our bodies. Our bodies need it, especially our brains. They've done some studies and realized that Alzheimer's and dementia is sometimes caused by the lack of good fat that we're not eating. We need to eat more good fats.
We do indeed. And one nut we haven't really talked about here that is common in Taiwan is the pistachio, 开心果.
I love those.
Those are very tasty as well. And they're actually fun to eat. You need to crack open the shell. You can do it with your fingers.
Yeah, but Tom, if you use your fingers and you're a female like I am, it ruins your fingernail polish, or sometimes you break your nail.
Oh, no.
That's not good. Tom also mentioned to me when we were on the break that he uses his teeth sometimes to open pistachio nuts. Do not do that. Do not hurt your teeth. Go and find something that helps you crack open that nut a little easier. But I love pistachios.
Yeah, maybe a nutcracker would work. But where we left off before the break, we were talking about macadamia nuts. Of course, their shells are hard to crack open. And we talked about the fact that they're very tasty. They have a kind of creamy texture. And they're delicacies in different parts of the world. But, of course, harvesting them is pretty challenging. It says challenging harvest and processing procedures combined with the fact that macadamia trees take 7 to 10 years to produce nuts explain their premium price tag. Okay, so we've got harvest procedures and processing procedures. Okay, they're quite challenging. Okay, it's very difficult for farmers to grow them and process them and harvest them to pick them from the trees, etc. It is very labor intensive, we could say.
Right.
And then, of course, the tree itself takes a really long time to grow. The tree can grow in a period of 7 to 10 years before they actually start to produce nuts. So I don't know if they would grow here in Taiwan, but if you thought about having your own macadamia business, you'd have to wait about 10 years before you had something to sell.
Wow, you have to wait quite a while to get anything off those macadamia trees. 7 to 10 years. Oh, I would start worrying. So yeah, it takes a while sometimes for our trees to produce nuts and fruit, depending on what you're growing. So the fact that they're so hard to grow, they're hard to harvest, they're hard to process, that explains or helps explain their premium price tag. Premium here just means the amount that you're paying for something. And here it just means a sum that's added to an ordinary price. It's a premium price. So you're getting the best of the best, but you're paying extra for it. And you can see now why when you go to the grocery store in particular, and you see those cans of macadamia nuts, why they cost so much. So now I understand a little bit more. I mean, I always thought that they were just a little bit more special and so they could charge more. But now that I know that it's so hard to crack the shell, I can see why they can get away with charging that premium price tag.
Right. And of course, it's a great gift to give somebody if you happen to go to Hawaii or Australia. You can pick some up and bring them back to Taiwan and give them to your parents or whatever. It would be a great prize to give them, a great present. But here in the next paragraph it says, perhaps the most surprising nut fact involves the cashew, which is yaoguo in Chinese, one of your favorite kinds of nuts. I believe they're often roasted and maybe a little honey mustard or just honey is added to them or something like that. Makes it kind of tasty. But we've got some facts regarding cashews. What we know as a cashew nut actually grows outside a fruit called the cashew apple. Yes, I've gone online before and checked this out. It does look kind of weird. These cashew nuts are actually growing outside of the fruit, and the fruit is called the cashew apple. And I believe they grow a lot of those in India, but I think mostly the women who process them have problems with their fingers because of the acid in the cashews, which we'll get to in a second. But in any case, this is a surprising fact or an interesting fact about cashew nuts. Yeah, they actually grow outside the fruit.
I didn't know that. Isn't that fascinating? I haven't seen the cashew apple yet. I'm wondering what it tastes like. Does it taste like the cashew nut itself? Or does it have a different flavor? It's kind of interesting. I'd also like to see a picture. So even more intriguing is the fact that raw cashews are not safe to eat. I actually wrote an entire article about this. I had no idea that cashews that are raw are actually dangerous. We're going to talk about it. If something's intriguing, it arouses your curiosity. It makes you think, what's going on here? It gets you interested in something. It fascinates you, perhaps. So even more fascinating or intriguing or interesting is the fact that they are not safe to eat if they have not been processed. So usually we talk about the joys of raw fruits and vegetables, right? Oh, they're so healthy. We're not cooking away all their nutrition. We're getting something that's really just like we harvested it ourselves. But in this case, raw cashews are very dangerous. So stay tuned, listen to this.
Yeah, they contain a toxic shell layer similar to poison ivy, which is why cashews are always sold processed. Okay, so don't eat raw ones. You'll be in big trouble if you eat raw cashews. And, of course, they are similar to poison ivy. Toxic just means poisonous. It's got something bad in it. Poison ivy is like a climbing plant that is poisonous, so stay away from that. The cashew apple, though rarely seen outside regions where it grows, like India and Côte d'Ivoire and places like that. It's actually edible and is used in juices and jams in countries like Brazil and India. Okay, so yes, indeed, the apple, the fruit there, can actually be used in some ways. It's actually edible. It can be eaten, and you can make it into different kinds of juice or even a kind of jam to spread on your bread.
If something's edible, it's able to be eaten. And the opposite of that is not unedible, it's inedible. I-N instead of the U-N. I-N-E-D-I-B-L-E. Inedible. You can't eat it. Sometimes you see these beautifully decorated cakes, and some parts of the cakes are inedible. You can't eat them. Although I think most of the pastry chefs try to make everything on their cakes edible these days. So nuts are small treasures of nature. They're filled with secrets and stories that enhance their simple, crunchy delights. Crunchy is a great word. Crunchy means you make a really strong, sharp noise when you either bite into something or crush something. I know when I kill cockroaches.
Oh, no, don't say that.
Their shells crunch when I step on them. I know it's gross. But my favorite food in the whole world is potato chips, I must say. They're not healthy at all. And I've given them up, but I love crunchy potato chips. Nuts give you that kind of crunch, and they're satisfying.
Describes the sound there. Crunchy, crunch, crunch, crunch. It describes that sound there. So anything that produces a kind of sound like that can be described as being crunchy, including nuts. So enjoy them and chew on the wonders they hold. So I bet after having listening to our discussion, you're going to head out and buy some nuts at your local convenience store. Indeed, they are a common snack here in Taiwan. And again, you can use them in cooking and baking and all sorts of different places. Okay, that brings us to the end of our discussion for today. Here comes our Chinese teacher.
那前面这个段落的第一句已经讲到夏威夷豆非常的贵，第三个句子就解释为什么夏威夷豆会这么贵呢？ Challenging harvest and processing procedures 最主要呢，就是因为在采收的过程还有加工的过程当中，其实要处理夏威夷豆都是非常有挑战性的。好，那再加上 combine with the fact， 还有另外一个原因，就是夏威夷豆它这个树其实需要7到10年呢，它才会开始生出这个夏威夷豆来。Explain their premium price tag， 所以这就是告诉我们为什么夏威夷豆这么的贵。再来，请同学看到第三个段落要介绍的呢是 cashew， 就是腰果。那腰果很有趣的就是，好，请同学看到第二个句子 ，What we know as a cashew nut， 我们所说的是腰果，它其实呢是长在果实的外面 ，grows outside a fruit。那这个 fruit 是什么呢？我们把它称为 cashew apple， 腰果苹果。好，那请同学看到第三个句子 ，Even more intriguing is the fact that， 这其实是倒装句，把补语主词补语呢放在最前面 ，intriguing， 让我们知道说有件事很有趣，就是 raw cashews are not safe to eat。那这个生的腰果不能够直接食用。下面第4和第5个句子就进一步的去解释了。那为什么呢？因为它有一层有毒的壳，有类似于呢毒藤。那所以 cashews are always sold processed。请同学把这个 processed 画起来，会不会觉得很奇怪？为什么又有 sold 又有 processed？ 好，前面这个 sold 其实呢是跟着这个 are sold。Cashews are sold， 那等于就是腰果被贩售、被出售。好，那这个属于被动语态当中的过去分词。那后面的这个 processed， 它其实呢是 cashews 的主词补语，就是它是形容词，用过去分词当做形容词，让我们知道呢它是加工的。Cashews 这些腰果呢，它是已经经过加工的。好，再来，请同学呢看到第5个句子，这里呢有一个形容词要特别注意，就是 edible。那 the cashew apple， 好，那 Cashew apple 就是我们前面讲到这个腰果苹果，它其实呢是可以食用的，而且呢基本上会在有哪些用途呢？会用在果酱里头或者果汁里头。那再来我们看到第4个段落，最后一个段落了，请同学呢看到第1个句子 Nuts are small treasures of nature。 那所以我们知道其实坚果可以说是大自然提供给我们的珍宝， filled with secrets and stories that enhance their simple, crunchy delights。 那其实这些坚果都有很有趣的故事，后面有一个形容词子句 that enhance their simple, crunchy delights。 那所以可以进一步的提升它带给我们的这些愉悦的感受。好，请同学看到第2个句子 enjoy them。 好，所以请大家下次吃坚果的时候好好的享用 and chew on the wonders they hold。 chew on， 那我们知道就是咀嚼，那这边呢其实就是细细的去品味。好，以上就是我们针对坚果这篇课文内容第2天的内容所做的中文讲解，谢谢大家。
That's it for us for today. Thanks for joining us. And if you want more of the similar content that we provide in our program, you can check out YouTube and Facebook for more content. It'll help you with your English listening comprehension ability. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.